Hi, welcome back everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces here, and you're in for a treat with this next workshop. I'd like to introduce first the title, which is focusing on the evolution of learning, education, and empowering the next generation of talent. It truly is an honor and pleasure to introduce my good friend and CEO, co-CEO, co-founder of Ironhack, Ariel Quinones, along with Karina DuQuesne, VP and General Counsel of Ironhack.
All right, good afternoon. I think we're gonna sit, right, Ariel?
It's good for your back.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karina DuQuesne, VP of People and General Counsel at Ironhack. Very excited to be here today. Thank you to eMERGE and everyone here to put this together. I'd like to introduce you first a little bit about Ironhack, and then we'll dive into our topic for today, which is how the future of learning is bridging the tech talent gap. Very important topic for our time. Ironhack is an EdTech company that is building a global marketplace for emerging tech talent. It was founded in 2013, headquartered here in Miami. Ariel and his co-founder Gonzalo started with one brick and mortar location, and now we have a global operation that spans 3 continents, and we have a presence in over 8 countries, including the United States. 9. United States, Mexico, Brazil, Spain, France, Germany, Portugal, the UK, and the Netherlands. Did I miss any?
Good.
All right. Okay, so moving on, Ironhack has raised over $26 million from EdTech investors, including Lumos Capital and Bright Eye Ventures. This year, Ironhack was selected as a GSV EdTech 150, which highlights transformational growth companies in digital learning. And I'm really excited to introduce Ariel. Ariel and I go really way back, so it'll be more of an informal intro. Ariel is an educator by nature. His family is a family of educators. He's been passionate about education his entire life, really about bridging that tech skills gap by developing talent for individuals and companies. He started his career at Credit Suisse as an investment banker in New York, and did that for several years before returning back and getting his MBA at Wharton, where he met his co-founder, and really the idea of Ironhack came into fruition. So welcome, Ariel, and thank you for indulging me in this conversation today.
Thank you, Karina. It's a pleasure. Thank you guys for being here today.
As I mentioned, we'll be talking about the future of learning and how the future of learning is bridging the tech skills gap. And what I've asked Ariel to do is to come up with a few predictions of what the future of learning will look like in the next 8 years, so 2030.
Can I say something about you?
Absolutely.
Before we go there, Karina was my first corporate lawyer in Miami 9 years ago at a very expensive law firm. So if you're ever starting a company and like your corporate lawyer, bring him in-house. That's the way to do it. Anyway, this is great. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Thank you. All right, so before we jump into predictions, right, let's talk about the tech skills gap. We've all heard about it, we've all read about it, but what do we really mean by a tech skills gap?
Sure. In the tech skills gap is very interrelated to the why of Ironhack. We started the business 9 years ago, and we focused initially on one market, Spain, where you had 2 numbers that were mind-blowing to me. On the one hand, you had 57% youth unemployment. On the other hand, you had 1 million jobs in IT and technology related field that were unfilled, that couldn't be filled. So you had one stakeholder in the market talking about the lack of jobs, and then employers were complaining about the lack of talent, right? Today, the problem is getting worse, as we all know. Who's suffering from the skills tech gap today? Just 3 of you? I think every company's suffering from this, right? And if you look at estimates, we play this out another 8 years. By 2030, it's estimated that we're going to have an 85 million professional deficit globally. That represents $8.5 trillion. It's a massive number. To give you context of the magnitude of that number, it's basically the economy of France plus UK, maybe Florida. That adds up to 8.5 trillion.
Not
So-
anymore, Florida.
Yeah, not anymore. Now Florida's massive, but yeah, that's why. And it's basically a supply and demand balance. When we see more demand than the supply that we have in market.
And I think the numbers speak for themselves, right? But let's put that into context. Why does that make the tech talent gap one of the largest issues of our time?
67% of the CEOs, so 2 out of every 3 CEOs out there, are saying that technology is going to be the primary driver of value creation for the next 10 years. Right? If we don't have the talent with the right tech skill set and the right skill set to build technology, then we're basically depriving ourselves of our ability to innovate. The way to drive GDP growth, the way to drive productivity gains will be through innovation, will be through technology. If you look at it on a cohort basis or group basis, the problem is even more acute and concerning. Right? If you look at minorities in tech, tremendously underrepresented. Women in technology, tremendously underrepresented. Right? So from a social perspective too, it's really problematic that a lot of folks are excluded from that conversation and won't participate in the most dynamic part of the economy for years to come.
Can we actually do a quick poll? Does anyone know what percentage of programmers are women?
More 20%?
A little lower.
Lower or higher? Well, you already said lower.
Oh, sorry.
Lower. What percentage? 10%? It's lower. Who said 5? 5.
5%. So I think putting that into context, it really highlights the importance of the conversation that we're having today and the work that we're all doing to manage that.
How can we build technology and products for women when 95% of the engineers are men?
So let's bring the topic a little bit back to education, because we hear a lot about the need to transform the status quo in the education industry. What are some of the challenges that the industry is facing with this reality in front of us?
So I think education and EdTech in specific is going through a renaissance of sorts. I remember vividly a pitch 9 years ago, and I'm not resenting this person, but I pitched Ironhack and the vision, and the investor told me education is the only industry where you can't make any money. There's no shot, right? Now it's very different. You know, we just came back from a conference in San Diego called ASU GSV. It's about innovation and education, and it was buzzing. All stakeholders, VCs, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, students, right? Incredible energy, incredible inflow of capital, incredible talent that's crossing over from other industries into education, which is also really, really important. So I set that stage to say, we've made a lot of progress in the past 10 years. A couple of things that I'm excited about, especially from our vantage point. By the way, like the education market is so big. Right? It's a 8.5 trillion market. It includes K through 12, it includes higher ed, adult learning. We're not operating in K through 12. Right? So most of my conversation points are around adult learning and right post-secondary. But in that space, the first thing we've seen is one of our focuses, right, which is skills-based learning. Designing educational programs that match the skills and the demand of the marketplace. Right? Obvious, but many players in the market were not doing that for a really long time. Second obvious point that I think we've all experienced in the past 2 years, right? The acceleration of technology in different types of settings, right? Learning settings. The enablement of physical environments using technology. And that's really, really cool because it does a number of things. Number one, reduce financial barriers. Right? What used to cost this much now we can deliver at this cost. Geographic barriers. The moment that we rolled out an online program for Ironhack, we started seeing people from villages, small towns, rural areas that didn't have an in-person offering in their market. So that's really cool. Very excited about social learning, right? And those two things sometimes feel at odds. How do we utilize the community, cohort-based experiences to drive learning outcomes, right? For many years, we're so excited about MOOCs. Do we know MOOCs? Who knows what a MOOC is? I see that word. Okay, so I have the crowd. So massive open online courses, so the Coursera's of the world, right? And those were great at reaching a lot of people, but what was the problem? We had very low engagement. Only 7-8% of people who started those courses were actually finishing them, right? On the other hand, when you're learning as part of a community, when you're learning in a cohort, engagement and the outcomes are much higher, right? So those are some of the things I'm thinking about.
I mean, only being in EdTech for a year, I'm really excited to see already a lot of the progress that's being made.
To the good side.
Exactly. But okay, so let's move a little bit into the future, a little distant future, 8 years, right? We're talking Emerge 2030. Ariel and I are back, maybe on the main stage this time, and we're having another conversation. What are we talking about? You know, give us your predictions. We're not going to hold you to them, but we may put them in a time capsule and open them up.
You can hold me to it.
All right.
And we'll do this. I'm going to take out my predictions. I'm going to Instagram them afterwards from the Ironhack US account. You can hold me to it. 10 years from now. All right? So let's go. Drum roll. No drum roll. All right, before I go into the predictions. They will likely be wrong. All right, but this is a thought exercise, and if you look at prediction exercises from the 2010s, last 5 years, they're mostly wrong. Right? You know, 10 years ago, I remember reading about, probably some of you read the same thing, the demise or the collapse of the university due to MOOCs. Right, that didn't happen. Right. Typically, there's two things that happen: we get them wrong, or we get wrong the time that it takes to see the impact and the end result of such strategies, right? So I'll probably be wrong on both fronts, but let's give it a shot.
Can you repeat the question just so everybody hears it?
Let's hold that for later. All right. Number one prediction. Thanks to artificial intelligence, every learner will have the equivalent of a personal tutor for free. Number two, emotional intelligence and soft skills will become the most important skills of the 2030s. Next one's a little bit confusing, so follow me. We will dramatically transform learner incentives. So we'll go from learn to learn, right? I went to a great school, liberal arts program, but I was learning about the Renaissance in Florence. I was learning about dinosaurs and their relatives. I was learning about the history of jazz, right? Skills match, I don't know, right? So that's kind of in the past. I think today we're talking about learn to earn. Get an ROI from your education, right? Get a promotion. Get your first job, right? I predict that we're going to get into a third stage where you're going to be learning while earning. We're going to incentivize students to learn. No, not my attention. Prediction number 4.
No, number 3.
Oh, no, that was 3.
Oh yeah, never mind.
Are you with me? All right, I have to you know, the blockchain guys are here, Algorand is here. I have to talk about the blockchain, right? The blockchain will play a key role in alternative credentials. As we think of alternative pathways, how do we really demonstrate that we know what we know? And the blockchain, I think, is perfect for that. And finally, we will see the rise of a true EdTech giant. The first education company to reach 100 billion in valuation. That's what I got.
All right, there's a lot there. I feel like you might bat like a 3 out of 5.
That'd be really good.
Yeah, it would. You'd be one of the best ball players of all time. All right, so prediction number 1. I have a question. What do you mean by AI becoming your personal tutor? How is that different from the world we live in today?
So I think AI will solve several problems. Not all the problems that a personal tutor solves, right? But many, and in fact, some of the problems it will solve better. Right? I think with AI, every learner will have a personalized learning plan. And that plan will adjust with feedback and user engagement. AI will have the capability to engage the learner by understanding learning style, learning preference, so that they complete and excel during that time.
So with the machine solving that need, what then becomes important?
Connected to the second point.
That was my point.
Soft skills, yeah. So I think, and I think we can all relate to this, right? Like if we think of, I'll speak to K through 12 for a second, right? If we think of young kids and high schoolers who have been deprived of that social connection, right? And putting a lot of the social skills in practice for the past 2 years, right? Really, really concerning, right? And the world is moving more and more in that direction. Computers started solving simple mathematical problems, very simple automation problems. And as we make progress in machine learning and deep learning, the types of problems that machines are solving will basically take a substantial amount of our work and our tasks every day, right? So my view, and this has been my view for many years now, how do we move up in the value chain as professionals? It's about emotional intelligence. It's about connecting to consumers, connecting with our staff, right? So I think the skill set for a digital marketer in the 2030s is not how to configure the best AdWords campaigns or the best social media targeting, right? It's how can I trigger an emotional response in my audience? That's where the challenge lies.
I mean, that one's interesting to me, and when you first shared it with me, I was like, wow, well, you know, we're in the business of hard skills, right? And we're right now in the thick of it. You're seeing so much happening around building, you know, technical skills, bridging the tech skills gap, and now we're moving on to soft skills in 8 years. You know, that's...
So today we are announcing our emotional intelligence school. No, kidding, no, but not yet. But you go. Okay, I have a customer. That's good. So listen, I'm not claiming that tech won't be important. So I think tech will be at the top of the list. For me, there's 3 skills that are really important for the next 10 years. That's what I promise you guys. I'm 25. I think emotional skills. I think critical thinking and problem solving ability. Right? And I think tech competencies. There's a lot of tech to be built out, right? And it's a moving target. When we started teaching web development 8 years ago, we taught a totally different stack every year, right? So that's my 3.
I feel like 8 years for that one, maybe aggressive, but the next one I am actually really bullish about. This whole idea of alternative credentials and the blockchain, right? As a talent acquisition professional, I spend a lot of time, you know, recruiting. That's a game changer, right? So tell us a little bit about that prediction.
Yeah, that's another one that I saw clearly 8 years ago or 9 years ago when we started the company. I think both you and I and many folks in the audience grew up in a world where it was one path for everybody, right? Went to kindergarten, spent 6 years in primary school, then we went to high school. Then if we were lucky, we would pursue post-secondary education, and then we would work for 40 years, right? That is not the best way to solve our current situation, right? And that's why alternative pathways are so important. And when I think of alternative pathways, the whole spectrum, not only plugging the boot camp category, you're talking about apprenticeships, you're talking about peer-to-peer learning, super bullish on peer-to-peer learning. Sometimes the best resource to learn something is a person out there, unaffiliated to any organization, any university, right? So how do we unlock that power? The problem that innovation presents is that now we're moving from, let's call it a centralized world of brands, universities, degrees, to a world where we don't know who's good or who to trust, right? And I think the blockchain, and I'm not going to claim to be a blockchain expert, but I'm super fascinated by Web3 and the blockchain. I think the blockchain is a perfect technology to solve the issue of trust in individuals. And we can almost imagine having our resume, our CV, right, on the blockchain. She says, exactly, let's do it. It's there. Yeah, and why is it so cool? It's open, it's immutable, which is a blockchain concept, right? We can't change it, right? It's verifiable, it's distributed. So that's why I'm excited about that one.
It's music to my ears, and I hope it happens sooner rather than later. So I glossed over the incentive systems for learners because I thought it was a good transition before, but I want to come back to that one because I'm still a little confused by it, right? So can you walk us through what you mean by a different incentive system for learners?
So people, we know that people respond to incentives, whether emotional, economic, right? But quite frankly, I don't think the incentives that we have today are going to cut it to bridge this 85 million gap that we're talking about in 8 years, right? So the degrees, certificates, dean's lists, it's not going to be enough, right? And this idea was inspired by a Web3 game, blockchain game. Does anyone know the concept of play to earn or has heard of Axie Infinity? Axie, they talk about Axie? Okay, so great. There's a lot of inspiration coming from other parts of the ecosystem. And the idea behind Axie Infinity, we don't need to get caught up on how the game works, but basically you play to earn NFTs, all right? And then you can take those NFTs to the open market and make money from it. So what ended up happening is you had people in the Philippines playing this game and quitting their jobs because they were making more money playing this silly game than working as professionals in some cases, right? So how do we take, there's a lot of challenges with that model, but how do we take that, right, and apply it to the world of education, especially in areas where there's a massive gap? A good example, I have two good examples there of stuff that's happening today. Who has Coinbase here? Or maybe I'm promoting some brand, yeah. Has anyone done the free classes where you earn some crypto if you complete? That's an example. Another really cool thing that's happening in corporate learning is you're seeing corporations not only subsidize the cost of the learning, but actually pay a stipend to the learner for him or for her to participate in that program and be able to take full advantage, right? So as we move the risk, right, and actually incentivize, we're going from like having to pay for education to being paid to learn. That can unlock a lot of value.
So what you're saying is that Warden's going to pay me to go back to school?
Hopefully we get a refund.
I don't think so, but you never know. All right, so the last prediction on the EdTech Giant, you know, why is that important? Why does that matter?
Listen, so I'm really rooting for entrepreneurs in the space, right? And there's so many other industries that I've seen, you know, 100 billion plus businesses built over the years. You know, now we're talking about like $1 trillion companies. Right? Think of the, you know, Amazons, the Apples of the world, right? And I think several things have happened, right, over on the macro level. Globalization, technology, data, right? I think there were two things that we were missing here. One was capital flows. Like I said, there was this kind of stigma with the category that you couldn't build VC backable enterprises in the EdTech space, and you know, you saw it a couple weeks ago. Like, you know, there's people raising $600 million rounds, right? And second, we're bringing world-class talent from within the industry, right, and from outside the industry to collaborate and solve some of the most pressing problems. We're already seeing companies valued at 10 billion, so I think it's a matter of time for them to compound, right, and reach that milestone. I'd say maybe we're going to get 2 or 3 in the next 10 years.
Well, we have 8 years, so. All right, so I know we have a limited amount of time, but all of these advancements, you know, there could be deviations, there could be roadblocks. What are the open questions? And in the classic Miami style, we have a club going on in the back. But what are the open questions that would, you know, delay this, detract, you know, all of this progress that we're talking about?
So as I said, you know, predicting the future, especially 10 years out in a very fast-moving space, is very much a fool's errand, right? So there's so many open questions. A couple interesting ones that I think about all the time as it relates to this and more broadly, right? I think the number one is what will happen to globalization. It's a big one that I have, right? We're all aware of very scary geopolitical events that are happening right now. We see the impact of supply chain disruptions, right? So we already start hearing this conversation to deglobalize, right? And that could have an impact, especially on the global giant prediction. What will happen with governments, right? Will they embrace the change? Right? Will they fight it? What will happen with traditional players, universities, high schools, right? Vocational colleges, right? Will they adapt, innovate, or stay on a steady course? Right? And then I think lastly, that point that I made about capital and human capital is really important, right? In order to build these great companies, we need great entrepreneurial energy. So if there's anyone out there listening to me today that is curious about building an education business, do it. It's the most rewarding industry to build a business in. If there's someone out today who is working in some other industry and has marketing, technology, finance, HR, legal expertise, come join us, right? In order to build these life-changing, world-changing, really big businesses, we need to work together and we need to bring the best.
I couldn't have said it better or ended on a better note. Any final thoughts before we finish?
I think Melissa has some final thoughts. And
Actually,
Felice.
we have a special announcement. Mel and Felice are joining us on the stage. You can take ours. Oh, sure? Yeah.
Awesome.
Hello.
Let's give it up for Ariel and Kari. Ironhack.
What an insightful conversation. Thank you both, not only for that conversation, but for your support, for Ironhack's support of Emerge.
And Ariel, don't go too far.
Yeah.
Come right on back.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
I mean, this this
No.
announcement involves you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to our partners at Ironhack, who were our partners for this year's Emerge Hackathon presented by blockchain.com. It's an incredible company. I highly recommend you check them out for many reasons, but also I think it's a great one just right next to the Spain pavilion because they exemplify what we try to do here, which is bridging divides and bridging our ecosystem here with other ecosystems, given their campus in Spain, both in Madrid and Barcelona. And we've got an exciting announcement, which is just one other way that we're bridging divides, is here at Emerge, we focus on helping entrepreneurs and innovators get access to resources and training that they need to compete in the new knowledge economy. And so that's why we are ecstatic to announce that we are partnering up with Ironhack to provide a $200,000 scholarship to the Ironhack program for underrepresented developers, women, African American, Latinos.
So proud of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Kari. More information coming out soon on that. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand it off to Carlos, I think, who's
Yes.
going to introduce the next. Thank you.
If you guys have any questions or want to meet Ariel and the Ironhack team and learn more about the scholarship, we're at booth 1131. We'll be here all day. It's actually on this side behind SVB. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go learn more.